So I'm very excited about the next panel as a football fan and as a DeDe fan. But I wanted to provide just a little bit of context about our announcement today that our Center for Cultural Diplomacy is heretofore the Center for Sports and Cultural Diplomacy, and why that is. I think we've recognized always the power of culture in bringing people together, and I think Randy Levine, Ambassador Levine, and Megan Beyer came up with the concept for this gathering, Culturefix, 5 years ago. And we looked at the power of music and the arts and storytelling as a diplomatic tool. And we realized that the context of how people share experiences is changing rapidly. I think it was 1896 when the first modern Olympiad was held. And that wasn't that long ago, if you think about it. But there was this concept that if countries came together every 4 years to put down their weapons and compete on the field of athletics, that this would bring the world closer together. And the Olympics did do that. They became an amazing, iconic experience. But there's a revolution happening today. Over the last decade, sports and women's sports has expanded exponentially around the world. And I think it's a cliche to talk about going to a conference in Washington and hearing about AI, right? You can't swing a dead cat without hearing an AI expert. And it is true that that is very important, but what is happening in sports is equally powerful. And we are about to embark on a decade of sports in the United States hosting the Olympics and the FIFA World Cup with our friends in Mexico. So I wanted to reflect on that diplomacy, we have to move diplomacy to where people are. And today, the iconic heroes in the world, many of them are athletes. I mean, look at Caitlin Clark, Alexander Ovechkin, Peyton Manning, et cetera. You're going to hear about this from the context of the NFL, which I think all of you know is expanding internationally very successfully. DeDe's going to introduce the panel. But I wanted to just share why we are renaming our center. It's not because we are walking away from the power of the arts and music and storytelling. In fact, that remains the foundation of our center. But we want to reach young people. And we also know that at a period when our soft power tools that the government has at its disposal are being, shall we say, minimized, to put it politely, we as Americans have to use the tools that are at our disposal as citizens and as citizen diplomats to try to bring people together. And sports is not only a great way to connect people, but it is also a powerful economic tool. I learned that nearly a third of British professional, what they call football and we call soccer teams, are owned by American investors. There is international investment, as we know, coming into America. And we need to use and harness the power of sports to help strengthen diplomacy. And that's why at Meridian, using our open diplomacy theory of change, we are expanding the aperture of diplomacy, and we're very excited about it. But we couldn't do it without great board members like DeDe. And we thank you for your leadership, and I'm going to turn it over to you for the fun part of introducing our next amazing panel. But by the way, one of the panelists could pick me up and carry me like a small child, but he is amazing, and I had the opportunity to meet him backstage. So DeDe, over to you.
Well, I think the addition of sports is brilliant. And certainly for me, being a Texan, football, as you know, is religion. It is. So thank you for coming here today, and it's a pleasure to introduce the final segment of today's program, Touchdown Diplomacy, American Football on the World Stage. As the NFL expands its footprint around the world, American football has transformed beyond a game. It's become a platform for storytelling, cultural connection, and the global projection of American values. Today's panel explores how the sport is serving as a powerful tool of smart power and diplomacy. We are joined by a truly remarkable group of voices. First, Her Excellency Geraldine Byrne-Nason, Ambassador of Ireland to the United States, is a seasoned diplomat whose leadership embodies the strength of transatlantic ties and cultural exchange. Next, we have F.A. Obata, defensive end and NFL free agent. I think he could pick us both up at the same time. Whose remarkable journey from adversity to the NFL embodies football's global reach and its ability to inspire across borders. Peter O'Reilly, EVP of Club Business, International, and League Events at the NFL, this is a really cool job, is a strategic force behind the league's international presence, helping to shape football's global footprint and its role as an instrument of American influence. Guiding today's discussion is Judy Battista, Senior National Columnist at NFL.com, one of the most respected voices in sports journalism and a keen observer of how football connects with the broader world. So please join me in welcoming this incredible, incredible team as we explore, pun intended maybe, as we explore how American football is shaping global perspectives and extending the reach of U.S. culture and influence. Thank you all.
You go in the middle, F.A.
I was small before I came in.
I feel smaller than ever.
The rest of us need to be on risers. Like they do. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having all of us here. We're going to talk about the intersection of the NFL and culture. You've heard a lot about soft power already this morning, the arts, the soft power of the NFL too. I want to give you some background information about the NFL's sort of international outreach over the years. They've actually been playing international games in the NFL since 1950. Those were preseason games, though, so they were sort of one-offs, a little bit more casual affairs. In the 80s, they had something called the American Bowl, and that was a commitment to play one preseason game, at least one preseason game, every year, somewhere around the world. UK, Mexico, Japan. I covered one of the ones in Tokyo. It was amazing. And then the big change came in 2005, and that is when the NFL took the big step of playing a regular season game that counts in the standings, outside of the country. That game, that first one, was in Mexico City, and more than 100,000 fans jammed the stadium, so it got immediate reaction, immediate embrace. And then starting in 2007, we have what is now known as the International Series, which is an ever-growing slate of games played outside the country. This season, 2025, the NFL will play 7 games outside of the United States. That's the high water mark so far. It will start in week 1, the Friday of week 1. Traditionally, the Super Bowl champion opens the season on Thursday night. The next day, there will be a game in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That's the second year that a game has been played in Brazil. There is going to be a game, I believe it's week 4, in Dublin, Ireland. That is the first regular season game to be played in Ireland. Highly, highly anticipated by everyone. 3 games in London, a game in Berlin, and then a game in Madrid, which will be the first game to be played in Spain, regular season game to be played in Spain. And just to show you how this continues to expand, next season, Peter O'Reilly is the brain behind all of this. Next season, that's 2026, the NFL has already committed to play a game in Australia. Again, very highly anticipated by a lot of people. So as you can see, this continues to grow quite deliberately, but also with a great deal of enthusiasm for where this might be headed in the future. We do have a poll question. We want to get your input on what you think about the sort of international outreach of the NFL. You can use, I think you've done this before, with the QR codes. It's how do you feel about the NFL's international expansion efforts? You've got some choices. You think it's a meaningful way to foster a global community and to grow the game. You're excited about the idea of a truly international league with teams based overseas. We can maybe talk about that later. You prefer games to stay in the US. You don't want to lose all those home games. You're open to international games, just don't move the Super Bowl out of the country. We've certainly heard that from fans, and you're neutral. It's up to the league. While you sort of register your thoughts, I want to ask all of the panelists what you see as the NFL's role. The NFL certainly has soft power. It's maybe a little bit different than some of the arts because American football has not historically been played globally. And I'm so curious what you all think about the NFL's role in soft power, maybe educating folks and how it represents American culture. Start with you, Ambassador.
Well, I mean, first of all, to say we are so looking forward to September and to seeing the NFL. We've had, I think we're beginning to look at ourselves as a little bit of a European home because we have a college football series that's now a tradition almost. So that soft power message has been seeded well in Ireland. And I think while, listening to your cold question to the audience about, the risks of losing this to an international dimension, I think the follow-through question is how extraordinarily positive and powerful the message is that comes with American football and American identity expressed in a way that's not a threatening way in any way. That the way the NFL has been handling it, and we've seen with the college series, that's very community focused, that working with the local community, so not a power that comes in to displace anything. In Ireland, we're deeply, deeply rooted to our hurling and our Gaelic football. But this arrival of American football has been seen as a completely new barrier, boundary broken through, thinking to the soft power that the US used back in the 60s. If it was jazz, Hollywood is an amazing soft power that you use globally. It's taken a while for American sport to actually come to that level in terms of capturing public imagination. And maybe the last point I'll make on the soft power, which I think sport has an unbeatable edge in, is that it's generationally powerful because you're actually working with the younger minds, shaping younger minds, young athletes coming in with those positive values of, determination, resilience, the scale of what you do is impressive, but also the quality and the level at which you do it in US football. So everything from that athletic skill through to the discipline and the resilience that's shown, that is capturing young public imagination, and certainly in Ireland, young people becoming increasingly engaged. So without knowing it, being influenced by the soft power.
You actually have a very unique vantage point on this.
I agree. I think it's been very additive in terms of the UK culture. When I first started playing football, no one knew anything about it. I told my family I was doing it, and they thought I was playing rugby. But now, I'm just going back every year. You just see the growth, and you see the influence that it's having in schools, and the culture is changing. Like you said, there's a new generation of kids that are choosing American football, and they using it as a means to get involved in communities and find themselves, find a voice, find a reason to stay active. Whereas we know soccer is easy to just pick up a ball and to take part in that. Whereas American football, I feel like because of the amount of equipment that is needed and the amount of coaching and stuff like that is needed, it's very hard. But with flag and all, it's becoming more inclusive and it's becoming easier to get into.
Peter?
Yeah, I think that we're in this position where we're fortunate to be this strong number one sport in this country, but we look at this opportunity and this challenge to become a more global sport, and we look at it as a challenger. We are a challenger, and we come at it humbly and do that in a way where we're going around the world not just to play games or the circus is coming to town. This is to the soft power in the conversation. It starts with a conversation. It starts with a conversation with government officials. It starts with a conversation with stadiums, with soccer clubs, the dominant number one entity in some of these markets, and you build those relationships. And we think about it and we build it as this is a year-round, multi-year partnership. This is not we're going to Dublin to play a game and then we go home. We, as well as the Steelers in that case, look at it as a year-round partnership. And you learn so much from that. And our game is evolving. I mean, you see that in FA. You see over the last few years, our players have had the option to put a flag of their country of heritage on their helmets. More than 425 NFL players or coaches represented their heritage every single game on their helmet, and that's a connection point. Some of them born there, some of them with close connections, and there's just more and more. And then when you sit, as some of you may have, at one of these international games and just feel the energy in there. I remember the first game in Munich, Allianz Arena, the home of Bayern Munich, and fourth quarter, Tom Brady's on the field. The entire crowd is singing Country Roads, Take Me Home. It's an incredible moment. You know, the music stops because you got to stop the music before the play starts. The crowd's still singing every word. They're singing. Tom Brady gets the first down to seal the game. And I'm like, goosebumps, crazy, everything, you know, where am I right now? And that's just those moments that perpetuate and then are seen around the world and are so positive.
There's certainly been an evolution, the NFL's approach to international games. You said it used to be a little bit closer to circuses coming to town when preseason games you would sort of parachute in and have a game and then get out. Certainly it has changed. You had NFL Europe for a little bit. Now you have international pathway programs. What led to that change in approach, including cultivating people like FA and developing people like FA?
I think that, first of all, we just wanted to share our game around the world in ways that we hadn't previously, that you see, because our game has been distributed on media in 200 countries around the world for so long, and that's an entry point, but that can't be the only thing you're doing. But we had cultivated fan bases in these markets, and the decision to move from preseason games, which are great and important, but predecessors of mine decided, let's deliver our best product live. That's what people want to see, our best product live. And because we play once a week, unlike some other sports, you have the ability to bring, you know, the English Premier League, I think, may never get to anything other than a friendly outside the UK, but we made that step. And then to your point, Judy, it was about doing every little piece of it, of culturally relevant media, like the low-hanging fruit, in language, build relationships, partner with culturally relevant organizations locally, bring flag football, which is the discipline of our game that is going to allow us to scale the sport around the world for young girls and boys, now an Olympic sport in LA 28. That is that simple, get a ball in every young girl and boy's hands, and that's beneficial to us, but that's also a connection point into these communities, and FA is so involved in our foundation in the UK with what we're doing there. So that strategy's been out there for a while. I would say now across our 32 clubs and the owners, this is, let's go all in. We want to be a global sport property, and let's do it the right way.
FA, you've obviously had an extraordinary front row seat, not just your own story, but now sort of taking a step back and viewing it from the outside. How have those programs maybe changed fandom and interest and just the knowledge of the game overseas?
Yeah, like you said, my journey hasn't been the conventional one into American football, and I found it fairly late. Started playing when I was 22. Didn't go to college and most of the mistakes and learning curve I was making in the NFL. But I've been very fortunate, like with initiatives like the IPP program, that gave me the platform to develop and to close that gap because we just don't have the infrastructure and the opportunities over there. But the love for the game is there. You know, like you said, the games have been played all around, and the turnout, and you know, you've seen the fandom and the energy that we bring to these events, and we just wish that we could take part in it more. I just think over the years, it's changing the culture. You know, it's impacting the community. Like for me personally, it's changed my life. You know, it's given me a voice, it's given me a stage, it's given me the means to provide for my family. And now that my name is associated with positivity, I go back home and I get involved with all these amazing initiatives, and I see firsthand how it's changing kids' lives. You know, I'm a part of the NFL Academy, and I've mentored so many kids that would either be in jail or dead, and they've used American football to change their lives and to create these work ethics that would translate into other positions, whether or not they do make it to American football or in the NFL. They've developed the skills that will allow them to be successful in other departments as well. So I think just that alone it's enough for me, and it's like you said, going into these not just coming in as a circus and gaining money and the fanship and going back, is actually leaving an impact in the community and in people, and that's what it's doing right now, and I'm here for that.
Yeah.
I just want to close the loop on the poll. This will be good news for you, Peter. You'll be happy with these results, I think. 61% of our folks here today say that the international games are a meaningful way to foster a global community and grow the sport. 28% want a truly international league. Woof.
Okay.
That's a big lift.
Pass that on to Kamish. She'll be here tonight.
Pass that message along, and 11% say it's the league's call. So very positive about international games. Ambassador, I wanted to ask you how your government handles these arrivals of American sports. In this case, again, a particularly American sport. When leagues come in and want to be a part of Irish culture, how does the government respond, and how does the government
with great enthusiasm, I have to say. I mean, I'm carrying around with me today what we call our International Sports Diplomacy Network, just in keeping with the theme that, you know, we now have, in addition to Meridian working on the subject, it's an actual government strategy to engage at the international level in sports, and American football is certainly the leading exemplar of that for us. I'd almost go as far as saying there's almost a little mini ecosystem around this in Ireland, because I'll give you a concrete example, more college, but it's going to happen in September with the Steelers and the Vikings there. But you know, with the college series, we have each August. This summer it will be Farmageddon, so it will be Iowa, Kansas. I was there. So we're looking forward to that. But I was in Dublin a couple of years ago for the Notre Dame Navy game. Just imagine, as the ambassador, I was obliged to say both of those in every sentence. So I tossed the coin and ran. But around it, the ecosystem is really quite extraordinary. I mean, that game, for example, the Notre Dame Navy, will be repeated in September. Biggest peacetime movement of Americans since World War II. 60,000 Americans got on airplanes, private and public, and came into Dublin. A street in Dublin was renamed. There's a Dame Street, became Notre Dame Street. We embrace it. 300 state legislators came with the teams, so there was political engagement at the highest level. And tourism and trade take the opportunities of working with, as with NFL, with the college state representatives, to actually make it an occasion for doing introductories in some cases, but follow through business opportunities. So it literally is more than a game, and we are convinced by the value of that. It doesn't in any way interfere with the spirit of the moment. It's a fantastic way in which Dublin is literally overtaken. And if I may, in a little parenthesis, say this year the poetry of having the Steelers with the Rooney family back will be infinitely powerful. For those who don't know, the Rooney family are like Irish royalty, I could almost say. They have been involved in the peace process and in the support economically in Ireland for a long time. So it's very embraced, but it's also purposeful on our part. We don't see them as mutually as inimical in any way. In fact, we see them as mutually beneficial. And it's built in that more soft power way around it. And then finally, just on that embrace, for those who come to Ireland, the cultural aspect, of course. I think of American football, it's sometimes it's seen as monolithic, big circus coming to town, equipment, players, etc. But the Irish managed to tie down the tent. So, you know, we have big cultural events that knit into it. Our own cultural actors, you know, join hands with the incoming players. So it becomes, to use a very Irish term, part of what we are. And I think that's the art for the arrival of a new cultural expression, that you don't displace local, but that you knit it into the culture. And now we have some really excellent young, I don't know if you know any of them, but young Irish kickers who are both rugby and Gaelic footballers, being picked up by NFL, being picked up by college. So we're seeing it work its way through the system. So overall, it's a really positive experience for us.
Peter, obviously, the Irish are prepared for the game, and they may be uniquely positioned for an NFL game because of the ties to the Rooney family and Ambassador Rooney. But I wonder what you look at as you're looking at countries to play games, and again, you're going to play a game for the first time in Spain this year. What are you looking for, beside the obvious thing, you have to have a stadium? What kind of factors need to be in place?
And the O'Reilly in me is very excited for this game, so there's no bias there. But it really is, the two things are, one, we look at a new market, what does the fan base look like? Is there this pent-up demand for the NFL? And you see it, and we've seen this in Ireland for so long in terms of the media engagement, the watch parties that have been done around games to bring people together. You see the huge crowds, and that type of engagement. In today's day and age, you see it in social media. You see how ardent the fans are. So that gives you that indication that this is no doubt going to be successful, where you've got a great Irish fan base, and to the ambassador's point, a huge interest from people flying from the US over there. And then secondly, it frankly comes down to partnership. Do you have the right partners? You certainly need a great stadium, but the right partners who build a trusting relationship with. And again, do you look at it through a multi-year lens? Because we're not choosing to play somewhere. You mentioned we're going to Madrid, we're going to Australia. Those are not one-offs. We're going to be in these markets for the long haul, opening offices, creating year-round activation. So we're very cautious of, we go when we know you've got that demand, and then you know you can be there for the long haul, because that's how we're building really the 20-year plan for having a concrete and real presence around the globe.
I don't know the answer to this. How long is the runway? Like when you first start considering a country, like from that moment to actually staging a game, how long?
It varies. Many times I wish it were longer, but it's so some, like I like this Australia runway. We announced it a couple of years out. Last year we went to Sao Paulo, we went to Brazil for the first time. Admittedly, that was a bit of a sprint. We announced the game about 6 months out. We did not yet have an office down there. We now do have an office. But again, we now need to get onto a cadence where we'd like to be about 2 years out. But that runway, you've got kind of that 3 or 4 years leading up to that announcement where you're really evaluating, doing things year round, and then you drop the pebble that is the game, and then you see all the positive ripples around that.
F.A., what kind of maybe misunderstandings about the NFL, NFL players, the sport, the fan community, do you know about overseas, and maybe that having games being played in other countries can help to displace?
In terms of misunderstanding, I think a lot of people, like when I first started playing the game or being introduced to the game, it was a very physical, barbaric sport that was solely for the Americans, and there was no means to access it or participate in it. It was very, there was one pathway to that, which was college, get drafted, or free agency, and then that's it. Only the chosen few get to be part of this. And I think over the years, with all these amazing initiatives and these expansions, with guys like myself and Jordan Mailata and all these other and Irish kickers that are paving the way and showing other people from different demographics and different walks of lives and different communities that they can access it, whether or not they went through the conventional route. This is something that that's open to them. I think that's something that's slowly changing. When I first started playing, it was initially an outlet for me because it's just the way my life was going. I was very frustrated. But I thought it was something that was never attainable. I just thought, okay, this is just something that's fun, and a lot of people share that same belief. But now, it's become this thing that that's attainable. There's different initiatives that are being created, and then also I think the community aspect is something that people miss, that don't really understand. There's so many branches that come off these things that like, say for example that we go to play flag or play a game in London, and then there's kids that want to do, I want to be in the media side now, or I want to be a trainer, or I want to be a coach, so there's different things that are being opened up to in these communities that weren't really there before, as opposed to just, I need to be an NFL player. So I think that's what's really good about it.
I'll wrap it up with one last question, if maybe the three of you could answer it briefly, turning that question on its head. What misconceptions about the United States and its culture can the NFL help to dispel as it grows internationally? Ambassador.
Well, I think I said at the beginning, this non-threatening approach. It's a great leveler, sports, and the idea that you bring that message of opportunity and openness, particularly to this current generation, who have, many of them have been educated abroad and want to continue to exploit those opportunities. In my own country, for example, sports predominantly, although absolutely every region, every local group have their own sports teams, it's amateur, it's not commercial. So to the point about this becoming a career opportunity, I think that's a very positive way of looking at it. That it's not that you're paying the guys on the pitch, but that there's a whole sports management around this. The professionalism with which it's brought through is really a new chapter for Irish people in looking at how football is played. I think there's always a risk wherever you go, whatever your scale and size, that you do a cultural overreach. I'm always guilty of identifying and appropriating everybody as Irish, every O'Reilly I meet. So I recognise the signs. But I think that more integrated opportunity and investment, that's at all levels with NFL, because it is the professional and the football level. But by bringing in, as we see it, and I know you don't dedicate yourself to this, but the business and the political dimensions to it, take that edge off. The idea that you're arriving, bigger and better than everyone else to deliver a lesson in sports. That is not how it's perceived and not how it's being managed in Ireland. And I will say this NFL game couldn't have a more poetic introduction because of the Steelers coming in. They're revered in Irish culture at large, and the fact that they're going to play a great football game kind of reinforces that in a way. So I think the risk sides are very low. But also the way in which it's been approached by the NFL has, to us, certainly in Ireland, illustrated that there's an understanding of that risk side. And we are absolutely, Peter used the term partnership, more than happy to be partnering in that. I think if you bring the local culture and community in to the conversation, those opportunities far outweigh any risks for the US. And I would think, as I said earlier, I think you did it so successfully with your music, with your screen industry, with so many, as we would argue we've done with our literature and our creativity as an export country. This is a new chapter altogether with sports.
Okay. Your thoughts on that? Like how can maybe we can dispel, the NFL can help dispel some feelings about the United States, maybe some, or can it?
You can go there.
Like sports is the, like you said, it's a leveler, and there's a love for the sport. There's a lot of people that in my communities that want to participate in it, and they, you got the avid fans, and then those that just, love the experience of it. But for me, my whole thing is about creating opportunities. My whole thing is about giving back, and just kind of being that voice and that resource that I never had in my communities. And the sport that I love so much has changed my life, and it's given me that ability to do that. So the more it expands, the more countries it goes to play in, and I just see that the impact it's going to have, the ripple effect it's going to have in terms of how it's going to impact the communities. It might take one person and change that person's life, and that person's going to continue go back in that community and give back, and their family is going to root for that person. It just has a constant ripple effect. For me, there was no, but I can be very vulnerable and very honest right now. When I was growing up, there was no role models. My role models were drug dealers and murderers. And so when I got the platform and the means to do that, I've gone back, and now the amount of people's lives that I have impact in and I'm able to change is amazing. I'm an ambassador for Mind, which is the largest mental health charity in the UK. I'm also an ambassador for the London Youth, which is one of the biggest charities in the UK, and they support hundreds of youth clubs. I give talks in prisons. I have mentorships. I donate, and that's all the above board stuff. Like, I do so many things, and that's just one person that's been impacted by the growth of the game. I wouldn't have had this opportunity if Dallas did play in London or gave me an unofficial workout. And so I think just this constant growth is just gonna, it's just gonna create more opportunities for more people to take part and to be a part of this great game that we all love, and hopefully just bring the world a little bit closer together.
Yes. You don't want to follow that, I'm sure.
I'll add, yes, in a very different way. I'll answer that similar to where I started, that we come at this effort very humbly and with a growth mindset of we've got things to learn. If we came at it any other way, then we would be unsuccessful. This is about having conversations, knowing that, yes, we have a lot of strength and influence in the US and the sporting world, but we've got so much we can learn from partners, learn from the GAA, learn from partners around the world. And so we think about that question and that balance all the time. I think about going to Brazil for the first time last year, and that game where everywhere we go, there's an expectation that this is this big American entertainment event. They think Super Bowl, they think Super Bowl halftime, they think all that surrounds it, tailgating. And we look to strike that balance. And Brazil, I think, was a good example of that. We hadn't been there before. We ended up working locally and booking one of the biggest Brazilian pop stars in the world, a woman named Anitta, to perform at halftime. And she was incredible, globally known, very locally relevant. And it was interesting in pregame, we had just come out of the Paris Olympics, and in pregame, we wanted to honor Brazilian Olympians, gymnasts like Rebecca Andrade and others, and we invited them, and they were thrilled, and we had connection with them. They were down on the field, and it was interesting. The Brazilians we were working with said, "Thank you so much for doing this, because none of the Brazilian soccer teams had done this, but you had thought this is a relevant moment. It's tied to sport. We're doing stuff so much around women's and men's sports." So, while also balancing it with the big entertainment and moments and the things that frankly are very different than soccer games around the world, which, as many of you know, you come into an English Premier League game, one team's fans go one way, one go the other. It's not that unifying, incredible experience. Ours is a big unifying celebration with these moments that we try to bring cultural relevance while being true to what we are, which is how people refer to us around the world, American football.
Thank you all. Thank you.